It's good to have you with us this Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your week with us. We're going to begin our show with a political pivot from President Trump regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files. Overnight, the president wrote on social media, in part, quote, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax.
The U-turn comes as the House prepares to vote on compelling the Justice Department to release those files. That vote coming this week. Just last week, a discharge petition received enough signatures to force a vote on the issue. Several Trump allies were among those to sign that petition. They include Georgia Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was once one of the president's most ardent supporters, but her relationship with Mr. Trump reached a new low over the weekend. In a few moments, we'll speak with NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona. First, let's bring in our White House correspondent, Monica Alba. So, Monica, tell us more about what we heard from the president about all this. Do we know why he's changing his tune and now calling for the files to be released?
Well, it's certainly notable, Joe and Savannah, because, of course, we had seen the president over the last few months really trying to talk about this and saying there was no need to necessarily release additional information, not saying that he would back this effort. And in his own post, he said that this is something he had pointed out on Friday night when speaking with reporters. But that's just not true. It was really last night for the first time that he is now calling for this, because it does seem there could be upwards of dozens of Republicans who ultimately break with the president and back the release of this information. And so that is why you are seeing the president now, it seems, observe where this is going politically and getting on board. And the reason he's also justifying that, guys, is because he's saying that Republicans are spending too much time perhaps debating this, talking about the Epstein information, and that he would like for Republicans to be talking, he says, about what the White House is doing and what the Trump administration is doing, and bring the focus back to that. So it does seem now that the president is at least going to back this, because it will likely proceed out of the House, and then it becomes a different matter, right? We don't know necessarily what would happen in the Senate, but there had been a question about whether, if it then passed and then came back past the House and then went to the president's desk for signature, whether he would veto that or whether he would sign it. Now he is signaling again that he's open to it, which is a really, really important shift in the conversation here.
The president's also calling for the Justice Department to investigate Epstein's ties to certain people. On social media, he named people like former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. We should note neither of whom have been accused of any wrongdoing. But could a potential investigation here, Monica, into specific people, maybe some others, be any type of excuse for the Justice Department to then turn around and say they actually can't release the files no matter what happens in Congress?
It's possible, because typically the Department of Justice with something like this could say, well, it's an active investigation, so we now can't release that information. What's really also interesting about the fact that there is this new investigation is that back in July, there was a memo that the DOJ released and cited, saying and trying to kind of justify the fact that they felt like there wasn't anything additional here of note, saying that any uncharged third parties, there wasn't any information or evidence found to actually charge them, sort of dismissing that. So it was really a shock when the president now is ordering this new investigation into, you mentioned, some of these key Democratic figures. And we should point out that former President Bill Clinton, through a spokesperson, said in a statement that this shows, the emails released, that he did nothing and knew nothing. And also, when you bring up Larry Summers, he has declined to comment on this at this time, but in the past, he has said that he regrets his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So that is a real question, but I think certainly Republicans and Democrats, this bipartisan call to release more information, to release the files, which, remember, came initially from the president's own top aides, from the vice president, from his own FBI director, from the attorney general. That is something that his supporters, the base, is still likely going to call for. So there's only going to be more questions on this. Even if there is some DOJ act or strategy to not release the information, this is not something that's going to go away.
Yeah, and Monica, speaking of his base, as we mentioned, the president's relationship with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has really broken down to the point where he has now given her a nickname amid her support for releasing the Epstein files. She says she's now receiving threats. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this really became a bitter back and forth for somebody who was a completely loyal supporter of the president, somebody who really has stood by him. But she says that this is about the survivors. This is about the people whose lives were dramatically impacted by Jeffrey Epstein and by Ghislaine Maxwell's actions. And so she is saying that this is in the interest of people to know what happened, and not necessarily because she believes there's any wrongdoing or implication when it comes to the president. And she's saying even that Republicans don't believe that the president did anything wrong here, and that that's the other reason for why they want to support getting more information out there. But the president was asked about this last night, and here's what he had to say about the ongoing discourse between the two of them.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
But certainly, Marjorie Taylor Greene really is the embodiment of that section of MAGA, of that movement. And it does seem that she has other Republicans in her corner, again, signing on to this, breaking with the president, and wanting to push for more information to come out, guys.
All right, Monica, thank you so much.
Thanks, Monica. Well, California's Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna is among those spearheading the push to release the Epstein files. He sat down with Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker yesterday to discuss the likelihood of the bill passing in the House. Here's Kristen with more.
Hello there, Savannah and Joe. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke exclusively with Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California about whether his joint bill to release the Jeffrey Epstein files has enough votes to pass. Well, I want to turn to the other big issue that you have been focused on, pushing for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Your joint bill with Thomas Massie is going to come to a vote on the House floor. It's expected to this week. Do you think you have enough votes for it to pass?
We do, and there's nothing I have been prouder of or more meaningful than this work. The credit goes to the survivors. They're going to be at the Capitol on Tuesday in a press conference. Massie, myself, and Representative Greene are doing. This was disgusting. Epstein had set up a rape island where rich and powerful men were abusing young girls with impunity. And there are thousands of victims, and rich and powerful men still have buildings named after them, scholarships named after them. This is not partisan. They all need to be held accountable. The Epstein class needs to go.
How many Republicans are going to join you? Could you have a veto-proof majority?
Well, I was hoping that, and then Donald Trump started to tweet out saying that he's going to unendorse people like Marjorie. So it's basically Massie and me versus the White House. I mean, they're calling members to the Situation Room. But you know why Trump is losing his MAGA base on this? The reason he's losing it is he ran saying there's a corrupt governing elite that has shafted you, that this is the Epstein class was the forgotten Americans, and I'm going to stand up for forgotten Americans. He's forgotten those forgotten Americans. And we are saying that we are going to stand up for survivors, for America's kids, and we're going to hold this class accountable.
You can see my full interview and a whole lot more at MeetThePress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Well, for more on what's next in Congress, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona. Mel, good morning. So we just heard it right there from Representative Khanna. He thinks they have the votes and it will be bipartisan. What does that mean is next? What's the timing of the vote?
Yeah, so this bill is on the floor scheduled for this week. It has not been given a specific day yet. Initially, GOP leaders were eyeing potentially sometime Tuesday, Wednesday. But now that Trump has come out in support of this bill, which was already going to get a significant number of Republicans, we're talking a huge vote here. And so what that means, just from a logistical standpoint on Capitol Hill, is they could fast track this and put this under a special procedure, which means it could come up even earlier for a vote. So we are checking in with our sources today to see just what that timing is going to be. And meanwhile, on Tuesday, as Ro Khanna mentioned in his interview with Kristen, there's going to be a press conference on Capitol Hill tomorrow morning with some of these survivors of Epstein's sexual abuse. And so that's going to be a really big, powerful moment, potentially right before the House votes on this bill.
So, Mel, despite these bipartisan efforts to force a vote, it does have a tough road ahead, as Monica alluded to. Even if it passes in the House, it has to pass the Senate. Needs 60 votes there. That means several Republicans would need to vote for it there, especially now in the wake of the president's U-turn. What are the odds that happens in the Senate?
Well, I don't think it's a question of whether the support would be there, because I actually think if this were to come to the floor in the Senate, it would get enough support to pass. Again, especially with Trump himself coming out and now trying to align himself with where the Republican conference already seems to be. That being said, it's a real big question about whether it even comes to the floor, because I found it very interesting that in that Truth Social post, Trump was very specific in saying, I think House Republicans should vote to release this. Nowhere did he say anything about the Senate. So perhaps he's calling on the House to vote it and then going to lean on the Senate to just not take it up as a way to get around even having it come to his desk for a signature. But that being said, if there is just this big bipartisan vote in the House, that is going to put enormous pressure on the Senate to act. It's going to be very hard for John Thune, the GOP leader, to just ignore that. And meanwhile, Democrats in the Senate are really going to sort of take up the mantle here, and they're going to try to push this at every turn, try to offer this as a vote every chance that they get. So this is going to be a big question for John Thune going forward.
But so, Mel, given what you just said, I mean, does it seem to you, do we have any reporting that the White House is sort of conducting any type of persuasion campaign at this point to get Republicans to vote against the bill, maybe over in the Senate?
Well, they have been, frankly, all over the map on this issue. Just last week, they were hauling in Lauren Boebert, one of the original signers of the discharge petition. She's a Republican, into the Situation Room for briefings, trying to convince her to take her name off that discharge petition. So there was a very intense last-minute pressure campaign to try to get them to back off the discharge petition. But now that the cat is out of the bag and that Trump sees the writing on the wall, it appears that they are just letting Republicans vote how many of them were planning to vote anyway. The question remains what they're going to do in the Senate. And if the leadership is leaned on by Trump to not even bring it up, that is the central question right now.
All right, Mel Zanona, thank you so much.
Passengers heading to the airport today will be greeted with some welcome news ahead of the busy travel season. As of 6 a.m. today, the Federal Aviation Administration is no longer reducing the number of flights. That means airlines can now return to normal operations. During the government shutdown, the FAA stepped in as airports wrestled with air traffic controller shortages, cutting the number of flights each day. That triggered widespread cancellations and delays nationwide. Now the FAA says staffing levels have stabilized, allowing the agency to restore full service. Officials say the decision follows a review of safety trends and reflects a, quote, steady decline in staffing trigger events at air traffic control facilities since the government shutdown ended. Public anger is mounting in North Carolina after federal officials say they made 81 arrests during a new immigration crackdown called Operation Charlotte's Web on Saturday.
Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino says some of the dozens arrested include violent criminals, convicted drunk drivers, and people with removal orders. City leaders, though, say violent crime is down in the city and they have it under control.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent just now with the latest on this. Julia, good morning. So what's ICE saying about this operation? Do we know why it's targeting Charlotte?
Well, what's fascinating is that this isn't an ICE operation at all. It's Border Patrol. In fact, this was not done in coordination with ICE. This is all because of a new character emerging on the scene, Greg Bovino. He actually has North Carolina ties. He graduated from Western North Carolina. And on October 14th, an anonymous user on X asked him to come to Charlotte. And he responded and said, we'll put Charlotte on the list. Charlotte came as a little bit of a surprise because it wasn't one of the cities that Trump or anyone at DHS had been publicly talking about, like Los Angeles, Chicago, New Orleans, Memphis was on the table for a minute. Now we understand that they're in Charlotte at least for the next week. It could be a shorter operation. As you said, there were 81 arrested. Bovino said that that was done just in 5 hours. And they're concentrating on East Charlotte. That's the area of the city where most people, where there's a larger Hispanic population. We've seen arrests so far in Hispanic grocery stores, outside of Hispanic grocery stores, in parking lots in East Charlotte, really going after that area of town where they think that they can sweep up as many people. You mentioned some targets where they know the background, but there have been many people posting saying that they believe that they've been targeted or profiled. There was one incident caught on camera that's been shared widely, at least in the community in Charlotte, of someone having their window cracked open. They're tackled to the ground out of their car. That person ended up showing documentation proving, here's that video right there. And they said from inside the car that they are a citizen. And then they said they later showed their real ID and they were released 10 minutes after that incident, Joe.
Julia, how's the community reacting?
Well, the community is really banding together. I've been in touch with a lot of people in the immigrant network of advocates, as well as local politicians. We've seen responses from the governor saying he's in touch with state and local law enforcement, notably not federal. We've also seen reactions from the Democratic governor, or from the Democratic mayor in Charlotte. And then we've also just heard from the Charlotte City Council. Take a listen to what this member said.
People were curious. They were interested in knowing how to best approach law enforcement, federal immigration enforcement, and ensuring that they're also safe in the process, but also making sure that our communities, our small businesses, families, and children are safe.
So as you can see, there's a lot of education they want to get out to the community, both in schools, what happens if someone knocks on your door. I've seen a lot of step-by-step what to do if you're approached by ICE and what you can ask them for before you open your door and allow them into your property.
Julia, you mentioned at least a week. I mean, has the government said how long this operation is expected to go, just what the goal is to accomplish here?
No, they've said that they just want to come in and do a crackdown on illegal immigration in Charlotte. They're really pushing back against some of the Democrats here. They've had sharp responses back to Governor Stein, saying that he doesn't understand the difference between an immigrant and an illegal alien, and that illegal aliens have no right to be here. Oftentimes, we don't have an end date to this. Look, L.A. lasted 2 months. Chicago seemed to last about 6 weeks, although Border Patrol and ICE are still very active in Chicago. In this case, I've heard it will last at least this week. It could be longer. Sometimes it has to do with whether or not they get pulled somewhere else. We've heard New Orleans might be next. And also sometimes it has to do with kind of these ongoing clashes that we've seen between the federal and local authorities and whether or not Trump thinks that it's worth staying there, really sometimes to illuminate what they think are wrong Democratic policies and to show more of that friction between federal and local leaders.
All right. Julia Ainsley. Julia, thank you.
Well, the West Coast is cleaning up after a weekend of deadly weather. Forecasters say at one point, 23 million people were under flood watches as an atmospheric river drenched Southern California. The unusual multi-day run of intense rain left behind widespread damage across the region, including in some areas still recovering from those devastating wildfires earlier this year. And while forecasters believe the worst may be over, there is still concern about the days ahead. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest.
Days of drenching rain burying streets beneath mud and turning Southern California highways into a dangerous slip and slide. This crash causing a frightening chain reaction in Ventura, one of many blamed on slick or even submerged roads. In just 72 hours, this atmospheric river dropped more than 6 inches of rain, giving some areas their wettest 3 days in November ever recorded. Fire crews rescuing a driver and his 2 dogs after witnesses watched his car slam into a wall before catching fire.
He was going really fast, last minute changing to this exit, and he slid off and hit the wall.
Crews rescuing another man south of L.A., hoisting him to safety after a flood's runoff left him trapped. To the north in Monterey, authorities resumed their search for a missing girl swept into the sea. The child's body was located, while outside Sacramento, a 71-year-old man drowned after officials say he ignored posted warnings and tried to cross a flooded bridge to meet a delivery driver. Back south in Altadena,
we just heard an unnatural noise, like just a big bang.
A massive oak tree crushing a parked car after waterlogged roots gave way. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
All right, for more on what's ahead for the West Coast, plus what's in store for the rest of the country, let's check in with meteorologist Andrea Romero.
Yeah, it's time for our morning news now weather. Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. And we have a lot to talk about the weather this morning. We're going to begin out west, where we have this next Pacific storm that's moving in, bringing more heavy rain and mountain snow with the renewed risk of flash flooding, even rock slides to the area. This storm will continue to trek towards the east tomorrow, bringing heavy rain rain that will be spreading into Arizona and Utah, where we can have some draining thunderstorms over Arizona. But looking at our radar for the last 3 hours, we can see that heavy band of precipitation extending over this portion of California, where we do have a flood watch in effect here for the central parts, and we do have that slight risk of flash flooding that persists from Santa Barbara all the way through Los Angeles. So today we're expecting more rainfall rates of about ½ an inch per hour that could cause that flash flooding to occur, and we could see an additional 1 to 3 inches of rainfall in addition, obviously, to what already fell in the area. We also have the possibility of some snow in the higher elevations here in the Sierra Nevada, locally up to 1 foot of snow. And talking about snow, we're going to trek on over to the eastern part of the country, and we have winter weather still impacting, especially near the Great Lakes. We have that lake effect snow. The storm system is starting to pull away, but we do have some snow showers on the backside of this low pressure. The gusty winds will stick around throughout the day today, and we have those winter weather alerts in effect across that region, winter storm weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and winter weather advisories. And we have the possibility of seeing maybe ½ a foot of snow still falling in parts of that area. It's also a blustery morning with temperatures that are around in the 30s, but feel in the 20s with the wind chill. So we felt it here in New York. We had to bundle up this morning, and it's very, very different from that record warmth that we're feeling in the southern plains in Texas. We've had some record temperatures, and we continue to be close to those record temperatures today into tomorrow, with that warmth extending into the southeast. So we're looking at temperatures in the 80s. Very different.
That looks nice.
I wish we were there.
Exactly. Especially the wind yesterday, my goodness.
Oh,
So,
yes.
all right.
Definitely feeling in the 20s. Thank you so much. See you in an hour. Well, investigators in California have made an arrest in the murder of a devoted college football coach who rose to national prominence after being featured in a Netflix series. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo has more on the 27-year-old suspect who's charged in the killing.
New information about the suspect accused of killing beloved Oakland, California football coach John Beam. This booking photo from Alameda County Jail showing 27-year-old suspect Cedric Irving Jr., who was arrested Friday in connection with the killing. His brother Samuel Irving also sharing this photo with our NBC Bay Area station, with Cedric shown on the left.
Hearing about my brother's arrest shocked me a lot. It made me tear up. I couldn't believe, he would have done such a thing like this. I wish he would have just came, to his family for help.
Samuel Irving saying he and his brother were not close, but he knew of no issues that Cedric had with Beam. Police say Beam was shot in the field house at Laney College in Oakland Thursday, where he served as athletic director. He gained fame from the Netflix show Last Chance U.
Oh, damn!
In 2018, Laney College became the top-ranked junior college football team in the country under his leadership. He was considered a pillar of the Oakland community. Bryce Grandison played at Laney under Coach Beam from 2015 to 2016.
Why do you think Coach Beam means so much to so many people?
Oh, wow. He cared for everybody differently. Every player needed something different. Some players needed more tough love. Some players needed to be challenged differently.
Police say Irving did not play for Beam, and he was recently known to loiter around Laney's campus. Authorities say the killing was targeted, but they've not released a suspected motive. Stephen Romo, NBC News.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.